So, hey there everyone. So, today I'm going to show you how to get the most out of cursor so that you could make cursor actually even more intelligent and even more better to get better results and to do some more complex tasks and try to get these in one shot. So yeah, so I already working on yesterday I worked a bit on the booking forms, but we did a bit of a change to some endpoints, and so we'll do these changes and then we're going to do another task, and we'll show you how I use AI doing these tasks. So first we had here like around 4 endpoints. The first endpoint was to create or update a form, and then the second endpoint was to get all the forms for a user. And this was for getting one specific endpoint, and then there was this delete. So we will be editing two things. First thing, we're going to make this to permanently delete the form, and then we're going to make a soft delete endpoint. So let me show you. So first, let's actually make this to permanently delete the form. So if we go to the service, which the service is the the file that has all the logic. So I'm going to go ahead, and there is this soft delete function. I'm going to actually just duplicate this and do delete. Okay, so we first check about the form, and then we not soft delete, we actually delete, and then form delete successfully. Here I'm going to rename this to archive form, and then form archived successfully. So one of the actually most feature I use in Cursor is this tab feature, and then you don't have permission to archive it. Yeah, so now we have two different functions. So we're going to go to the controller, and then scroll down to this delete endpoint. We're going to say delete form, which is the one that hardly deletes it. And then we're going to duplicate this and do a second endpoint that's going to be /booking/forms/archive/ID. And this would be like archive form, and then here archive form. So I think the two endpoints is now done. We will be going to Postman, and then this one here should permanently delete the form, but first let's actually see what we got here. So let me start Docker. Okay. Great, so we want the booking forms. So in this booking forms, we got here this one, which is soft deleted. So I'm going to retrieve this back. And then let me get the ID. We're going to go to Postman, and then just replace this ID right here. and let's send a request. We didn't start the backend. Let me start this. So as you can see, it started successfully, and the form is deleted successfully. So now if I do this, as you can see, the form is permanently deleted. Now let's create this form once again. So let's say, what if we made a duplicate? Oh yeah, it updates. Okay, great. Let's make one. So yeah, there's like these two forms. And then I'm gonna take this ID, and then I'm going to, this ID, and then I'm going to go and create a new endpoint, which is delete again. Just take this exact endpoint and slash archive slash this ID. As you can see here, let's get the ID once again, like that. And yeah, I'm unauthorized, so we're going to go to the headers and just put a cookie and put a token. So in Postman, there's a cool feature which you could put in a a variable with a token or something. So in this case, I have a variable with my token. So form archived successfully. So now when we do this, we are going to find that this one here is soft deleted. So let me first save this as archive form, and then we're going to go to booking forms and save this. And then I want to save the response as well. So this is when it's successful, and then this is when it shows a 404. So at the end, I'm just gonna add a 404. Yeah, exactly. So one other thing we want to edit is if we get a form data, for example, get all forms, let's say, we are going to have here something called is deleted. We want this to be is archived instead of is deleted. So let's do this. So we're going to go to the endpoint where we get all forms. And then right here, instead of is deleted, we could say is archived. Okay, great. And then get up and update this one as well. So now when we do this, it's is archived and not is deleted. So let's delete the old response here and save the new response, as you could see. Great. So now that everything is done, yeah, we could now export the new Postman endpoints. So I could give them to my co-founder so that he could do, the front end. So I'm gonna export the JSON in this directory, and then I'm gonna replace the old one. Now, as you can see, it's already modified. So now I'm going to go ahead and push this into staging. I didn't do a new branch, I know, but this was a really small change, and this new backend isn't in production yet. So that's why I'm, not doing several branches, but usually I work on several branches, and then from that new branch, I go and merge to staging, and then from staging to master. So yeah. So first, I'm gonna add everything. Actually, let's use the built-in, AI commit message creator. Yeah, that's a great one. Let's sync everything. Yeah, now everything is synced. We could work on the something else now. So now I'm going to go ahead and go here. I had something like a Google Sheet. It was a different Google Sheet with all the database structure, but today we're going to only be focusing on either one of these or both. So let's first start with providers. So now I'm going to create first this database structure. So now I'm going to go to cursor, and then inside this backend, I'm going to create a new module using Nest.js. So it's Nest G for generate, and then I put the schematic I want to generate. In this case, it's a module, and I'm gonna call it providers, like that. As you can see, it's already created. Now let's do the service and controller. So first, let me put the controller. I'm gonna name it providers, and then I'm gonna do the service now. So as you can see, it's already created. So I'm gonna remove this spec file because we don't want to write tests at the moment. So I'm gonna remove the both files. And then inside the folder, I'm going to first of all move it to another folder. I called it services, like that. And then inside this folder, I'm going to create something called an entity. An entity in Nest.js is simply the file that you create the database using it. So in this case, it's providers.entity.ts, like this. So by the way, while I'm coding, if you have any kind of question, you could just drop it and I'm going to answer them. Anyway, so let's first of all do the entity. So Nest.js works with decorators, which is like at and then what decorator you want. In this case, it's an entity. Actually, cursor is telling us, using the autocomplete. Good, but we need to edit some stuff. Like this here should be a string and a UUID. And then now we need the user ID. So it's going to be a column. And then we are going to call it user ID is string, and then we got the name, the email, the phone, that's correct, and yeah, but this one here is going to be a bio, and then there's an OTP code, code, and then the OTP expires at, and we don't actually need this here, and we are gonna need here to put a type of timestamp, that's correct, and this could be nullable, and this one here could be nullable as well. Yeah. What else we need? So we actually also need the created at and updated at. We're gonna say created date column, import these, and that's pretty much it. I think now let's just throw by everything. So the name, the email, the phone number. Actually, let's make this phone number optional, right? The bio, I think the bio is required. Actually, let's make this optional. Yeah, so I think everything here is done. Now we're going to create the second part of creating a database, which is called a repository. The repository is simply the file that the service would call to, connect with the database. So it's like, it's something in the middle between the database and the service, so that you could connect between, you could, talk with the database. So let's create this. So it's called providers.repository.ts. So to save some time, I'm going to do this using AI by just coming to an existing thing, like for example, the users, and then taking its repository, and then coming here and just paste it, and then the autocomplete will tell me what to change. So now everything is changed. So I could now go to the module and say to TypeRM, I'm using TypeRM, not Prisma, to okay, now you could create the database. So it's typeorm.feature. So I think telling me to autocomplete. Yeah. Great. I don't think we should add this here. Let's actually double check, right? Yeah, I was correct. We don't add this. As you can see, it's already added here. So till now, I'm not using AI heavily, but when I start creating the endpoints and all that stuff, I will actually start using AI like very, very heavily. So now let's make sure everything's running great, and yeah, there is a problem with the inputs. Yeah, okay. Now let's go here and refresh the tables. Yeah, a new table is created, which is called the providers. As you can see, all the data is created correctly. So it's simply that easy to create a table in Nest.js. So now that that's created, we could focus on doing the endpoints. So here I'm going to use AI I'm going to go, for example, here and take, so now there's, I should put here something called a constructor. Actually, it's telling me to do this. But he did something here incorrect. So let's correct this. So if I go, for example, to the user's profile, you're going to find that we need to inject a repository, and it's not also a read-only. So it's a read and write. So here we're going to remove this read only, and then add this inject repository, and this would be providers. Exactly. Import that. Add imports. We don't want any endpoints right now. And the constructor now is created correctly inside the service. Now we're going to go to the controller and say, okay, we're going to create another constructor that talks to the service instead of the database, right? So here, I'm going to add, that's, correct. So as you can see, it's added. Now we could create endpoints. So let's first of all examine everything. So first we want an endpoint to create a provider, right? And then an endpoint to update a provider, and then an endpoint to get all providers for a certain user, and endpoint. So actually, let's write this in a new text file. So we want a update create get all for users, get all providers for user not users, and then we should also have a get provider by ID, delete provider, and actually get all archived, actually that's, and then archive provider. That's now correct, as you could see here. So everything is now, So yeah, these are all the endpoints we're going to need to create. So first, let's go and create this update and create. So actually, what I prefer to do is instead of creating two different endpoints, I prefer to create one endpoint that does both tasks. It's called a put endpoint. And it uses a put request instead of a post and then an update. The put is simply an upsert which updates or creates an endpoint, a record in the database. So let's do this. So I'm gonna go to the service, and now I'm gonna go ahead and okay, we're going to edit actually some things right here. So one, we're going to rename this as upsert instead of create, upsert provider. And this would take, actually, before doing this, we need to do a DTO. I totally forgot about this. So I create a new folder called DTO, and then I create here different DTOs for different things. So a DTO is simply like what the endpoint, what's the payload of the endpoint, and then we also add validation to that inside that DTO. So let's do this. So first, I'm going to make this upsert provider.dto.ts. So it's upsert provider.dto.ts. We're going to export a class of upsert providers DTO. Okay, and then now I'm going to use AI to just speed up everything, and instead of writing down all the payload, I could tell AI, okay, get the payload, like examine the payload using this entity which is from our database, and create the DTO yourself. So I'm going to use inline edit. So in cursor, there's like several things. You could use the chat, which is like Command L or Control L, or Command K, which I prefer to use in such simple tasks. So Command K, as you can see, I'm going to edit full file. Let's keep it on auto, and I'm going to tell cursor to please create all the fields for this DTO using the data from, and then I'm gonna say providers entity, and make sure to apply validation. So he will simply look how I apply validation in other DTOs, and then he will use the same packages I use for validation, and then he will create the DTO with validation right in this file. So let's send this. So as you can see, it did it really fast. So let's review everything. So I'm gonna get this a bit to the bottom. Okay, so first he has an ID. We're going to remove this because IDs is auto-generated. So we're going to remove this. And then when it comes to the user ID, we're going to also remove this because this would come from the session, or the token the user's logged in. When the user's logged in. So now we have the name, the email, these are required, correct, and then the phone, that's optional and is optional, correct, the bio, and actually let's add here a max length of, let's import this, and let's add a max length of, this is 1,000, 1, 2, 3, let's add this to be maybe, let's keep it 1,000. I think it's great. And then the OTP code is optional and it's a string, okay, and this is optional. So I think I'm going to accept this, and this is just because of formatting. When I save this, everything's done. We could actually remove this because it's never used. And yeah, the DTO is created. Now we could go back to the service right there and now start creating the endpoint. So first it's going to take provider from the provider DTO, that's correct. So we need to import this, and it's going to take the user ID, which is a type string, and it will return this type here. Okay, so now let's actually tap. Okay, so let's see. So first we have here, it checks if there is an existing provider or no using the provider repository. It uses a function called find one, which finds one, finds one record using this data. So where the user ID, and actually, let's see how we would update. We would get a provider to update. So I'm thinking of using, actually, let's go back to the entity. So we could make, unique, unique providers. So actually, we are going to need to use this ID. So I think we're going to update this DTO to include the ID. But first, let's make a unique value. So here, I don't want to only look on user ID, because if I said here, like, that's unique true, as you can see here, it will simply, it will mean that each user would only have one provider allowed, which is totally incorrect. We want to have multiple providers for each user. So that's why we're going to use a decorator here called unique, which simply lets you to add what's unique. Like, for example, the user ID with the email. So the user couldn't add this exact user couldn't add the same provider with the same email multiple times. So let me go ahead and show you an example. So I remember we did this in the forms that we were just working on a while ago. As you can see, we use this unique, we give it a name, and then we say, like, we don't want to include we don't want the same user to have two forms with the same title. And so we use this. So actually, let's copy this and paste it right here. And then I'm going to say that this is providers unique. Actually, cursor, I feel like cursor hears us. So yeah. So now let's go to the service once again. And then actually, let's go to the upsert and include the ID, not user ID. Let's import this and let's save. And that's actually not optional, it's required. So let's get back to the service. And inside the service right here, I'm going to simply say, okay, we want where the ID is that ID and the user ID is that user ID. So now this is the provider. So if the provider isn't found, if the provider isn't found, we're going to create a new provider using the create method from that repository with this DTO for this user. And then we're going to return this, we're going to save it and return what we have saved. What if the provider is found? Then I'm going to simply tell the, actually, we don't need this. We could just say, like this autocomplete was saying. So we take the old provider, we put the new data, and we just save this and return what's saved. That's it. Now we could go to the controller. This is the controller. Let's put these, side by side. And I'm going to come here and create a new method. It's okay if they're, the same name. So it's upsert provider. We are using a put request, as I said earlier, and not a post. and then we are going to simply say, okay, we want this DTO to be in the body. We want to take this from the session, the user session, like that. And we need here to use guard so we could, the user couldn't, use these endpoints without being authorized. So we are going to say this one here, and this is from Nest.js common. And then actually these here, let me remove this session. Let me remove this user session. Actually, I forgot where was these imported from. So let me, yeah, I was correct. So I'm gonna get these and import them right here, and remove this session from here. And yeah, now everything seems to be correct. So now I'm going to return the function we just created inside the service, and then tell him, okay, there's the data you want, which is the body, and then the session.user.id. So that way we have simply we have an endpoint that is ready. So now we could go to Postman, and as you can see here, it's /providers. We didn't change anything here, so it's /providers. Using put request would trigger this here. So let's do this. So I'm going to be creating a new endpoint, put request, and I'm going to use the localhost 3001 because we're running on this URL, and then /providers. And if I call this, it's going to tell me that, okay, you need to put a body. So to speed up everything, let's actually move this. To speed up everything, I'm going to tell cursor in ask mode, give me a valid JSON for the provider's endpoints. I meant here the body, but hopefully he will understand what we want. Actually, okay, so this is all the JSON. Actually, we need to edit something before working, which we need to put this as optional, because if we're creating one, if we're creating a new provider, then simply, let's add here this question mark, then simply the ID wouldn't be required because we're creating a new one. But when updating, then we are going to need this ID. So first, I'm going to say that this is optional, not text, we need JSON. This is optional, so my co-founder could know what's optional and what's required. Optional, optional, and optional. So let's remove these optional fields for now. I'm going to leave the body, it's okay, but remove this trailing comma. Leave the phone. Let's leave, let's remove the ID because we're not updating, we're creating a new one. But what if we include this? It will still create a new one, but I want to test without the ID first. So he's an experienced healthcare provider with over 10 years of practice in general medicine. Okay, let's try this. It's going to, no guards. Okay, so if we don't include this, it's going to tell us we're unauthorized. Great. It's an internal server error because we don't have an ID. But we should handle all errors. So it's a duplicate, as you can see. So there's your duplicate value, and so there was actually a code I used to check for previously to see if something is duplicate or no in old projects, but I don't really remember this code, so let me get it from an old project I was working on here. One sec. I remember it was 301. Let me just double check. No, it's not. So the project is quite, complex. So I'm trying to find this code and remember where yeah, I found it. So actually, let's take this. Okay, so there was, let's import this. Okay, so there was this code. 1 second. So we need to put this in a try catch first. So to improve this, we need to put these in a try catch block. So I'm going to be saving this. Actually, to save some time, I'm going to show you how I will use cursor to do this for me. So I'm going to come here and just put this as context for the AI. So let's actually say we're in agent mode. I want to put this as a context. Booking, no, we want providers dot service. Yeah, and then I'm going to provide this code. No, actually, let me copy this once again. Like that. And put this, and then I want you to check for duplicates using this block. Just make sure to add the to add a try catch block. So we will wait for cursor to generate actually everything. So one thing is required, at least for me, when using AI is to double check AI's code and make sure that AI provided the correct code. So it's solving all errors. Yeah, it's done. So let's review. So first it added this try block. If the provider isn't found, it does the, alt logic. Otherwise, it will update this. And then in the catch block, it added, this, as a DB error, and then it has this code as a string, and then it checks if this code equals that code. It throws a conflict exception, and then a provider with this email already exists for this user. Actually, I'm going to say, yeah, okay, that's correct. And then otherwise it's error saving provider data, please try again later. So this seems correct, so I'm going to accept that. And let's test this once again. So when I do this, it's going to say it's a conflict because that already exists. What if we uncomment this ID? Let's go here and just view this providers. We're going to find that there's a new provider added, which is great. I'm going to take this ID and then go ahead and replace this one with that one. Yeah, now it updates it. So if we say it's, we're going to add one, as you can see, it's only Dr. Jerry Smith. Now it's going to be updated, which is great. So, optional only when updating. I'm going to now save this request and then create or update a provider. In Calendar TV2, I'm going to create a new folder called providers. Great providers, and just save that in. Amazing. I'm going to also save the response. Great job. So now if we went back to cursor, we could now, let's see what other endpoints we want to do. So this update and create are already done. So, I'm just gonna add this, this sign to just, mark them as done. Now, get all providers for user. That's a really easy endpoint actually. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do this immediately. So in the upsert profile, oh, we are in the profile. Okay, so we need in the provider. Let's close this one. And then in the service, yeah, we are going to create a new function called get providers. It's going to return a providers of type array, and it's going to only take the user ID. That's correct. And then we're going to return, and then this dot find this where the user ID equals that user ID. That's it. That's literally it. So as you can see, cursor literally did all the work for that endpoint for me. Now, if I go to this controller, and I'm going to create here a new get requests, import this, use the same session, return in the same format, and just return this service thing. Now, if we actually copied the same endpoint and then created a new one with a get request, it's going to show unauthorized. Now, if we go to the headers and add a cookie with the token and send this without anybody or anything, that's going to actually return everything, all providers, as you can see. So actually, let's create another provider to actually show you how it will return them all. So actually, let's add this like that. Actually, let's Joan Wick. Actually, and then joan.wick@example.com. So now we got here a new provider. We got here, let me see. Oh, we updated it. Yeah, we updated this. So now I would like to create another provider with John Smith once again, instead of updating something. So that will create it. Yeah, now it returns both providers. As you can see, it returns Joan Wick and Joan Smith. Great. So now we could save this request. We could save this request and then get all providers, save that in there, save the response once again, and I think move on to the next endpoints. Let's see, what do we have next? We have a get provider by ID, so I think this would be the last endpoint we're going to be creating for this live stream because I gotta go, meet someone, and so let's create this for as a last endpoint. So go to the service once again, and then I'm going to create a new function and get provider. We need the ID of this provider. Great, no user ID. I don't think there's any need for this, actually, because yeah, the ID is already unique. So let's find one. So actually, so it doesn't show an internal server error, we're not going to do this. Instead, we're going to have something called const provider equals await, and then returning finding this provider, and then exactly we're going to see if this provider doesn't exist, then throw a not found exception, provider not found, and then return this provider at the end if it's found. Go to this controller, we're going to have a get request with the ID as a parameter, and then import this. And I think that's literally it. Now we could create a new endpoint, take this same exact path, just include here the ID of the provider we want. So for example, if I want Dr. Joan Smith, I could take this, it's unauthorized, so let's log in. and then let's put here a token. There you go. What if we want John Wick? So we're going to simply replace this ID with this one, and that's literally it. So now we could say git provider and see if it's in this folder. Now let's go there and mark this as done. So now we got only these two endpoints left, but I gotta go now, so that's why we're going to be doing these later in the next live stream. Thanks for joining in. Stay tuned for the next one. Have a great day.